Welcome back everyone, this is Mondo All Day, back with another video. And in this video, I'll be doing an overview of Batman Eternal Omnibus, the reprint. As always, I'll be talking about a little bit of the story, the art, and of course, if it's worth your purchase or not. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button to not only support the channel, but to keep up to date and watch videos like this. So let's take a look at front of the dust jacket. Alright, the spine, a little Batman right there. The back, and I'll show you a full spread image of the dust jacket so you can see that. Pretty cool. Put this to the side. Here's the front of the book, the spine, the back, and I'll show you a full spread image, if I can, of the dust jacket. Of the art in the book. Pretty cool. Alright. Now let's take a look at what's inside. So, what is this book about? So, this book... Oh, okay, here we go. This book is massive. Massive. I mean, more than 1,200 pages, but... I'll talk about that in a bit in terms of the massiveness, if that makes sense. But, anyways... So, the book starts off with here Batman teaming up with Gordon to stop Pig and his goons. Batman goes off, he captures one of, Pig, I should say, and then Gordon goes off and chases one of the goons. Something happens, which I don't want to say too much, and unfortunately, Jim Gordon is arrested, and he's charged for property damage, but more importantly, several deaths that occurred because of his actions. And so, the main plot, and again, this is important, the main plot is going to be Batman seeking the truth in terms of what exactly happened, and prove Gordon's innocence. Now again, that's the main plot. And this is what I want to talk about when I said massive, because this book has so many subplots. I mean, the main plot, like I said, is proving the innocence of Jim Gordon, which is fine. It's pretty interesting, to be honest with you. But this book has so many subplots. I mean, you have one with Spoiler, which is about her and her family. You have Bluebird, which is also about her and her brother, her family or brother, being possessed. Then you have, of course, Batman trying to prove Jim Gordon's innocence. And then you have Batwing as well, too, going into Arkham, seeking this, like, underground Arkham world with magic. And then you have Batgirl, who's going after a lead to prove, of course, her father's innocence. And then you also have Catwoman and a little bit about her and her heritage. And on top of this, also, like, many subplots. I mean, they're really, really short. You have Jim Gordon and his family, which I won't say too much about it. Then you have Vicky Vale. Yes, Vicky Vale is in here too. She also has part of the story, which is seeking the truth. Then you have, not so much of a subplot, but more backstory to Pennywise. Yes, Alfred Pennywise. There's more to him. And, of course, Killer Croc. So, again, this book has so many different plots. And that's also the con. Well, it's a pro and a con. So, with that said, I like this book overall, but it does have its issues. One of the issues is it's going to be the several subplots. Now, some of them are good, some of them are kind of whatever. Like, the ones I really didn't care about is going to be Batwings. The whole Arkham and Magic and who he teams up with, it's cool in concept and idea, but I think like the execution is kind of like whatever. And most of the time when I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, what happened? What's going on? And I didn't really care, to be honest. Catwoman's whole background and heritage is kind of cool, but it's a little weird because I always have a certain view of Catwoman, and the way they're trying to twist it and add more context to her is just kind of like, alright, I can kind of go with it, but I'm just not really feeling it. And the other stories, or subplots, as you say, they're the biggest problem with this book is going to be that so many stories going on, and it doesn't work. It just, not that it doesn't work, it's just so much going on. They try to juggle everything at once, and it just doesn't flow right. It feels very disjointed. I mean, there's times where you're reading, for instance, like the Batgirl story, right? Or subplot, where she's trying to figure out what's going on and prove her father's innocence. As she gets a lead, she goes out and teams up with another character, which I'm not going to say, to prove his innocence and get more information. And you go on with like issue after issue regarding that, and then out of nowhere, go back to Batwing. And by the time you go back to the Batwing, you're like, wait a minute, what was Batwings about? And that's what happens a lot in the story, to where some issues stick with like Batman, and then out of nowhere, Bluebird story comes into play, and it's like, wait, what happened? What's going on, Bluebird? You kind of have to go back a lot, and you get that a lot in this book because there's so many things going on, and I commend the writers for trying to juggle everything, but unfortunately, it's a bit messy, and so that's the problem with this book, is that it's just. It's too much going on. It's really too much going on. I kid you not. There's so many things going on, and it doesn't have to be. Because this book feels like similar to a video game. Like, you ever played a video game to where, for instance, I'm playing Suicide Squad, right? The video game that came out not long ago. And of course, the main plot of the game is going to be about, or the story is going to be about Suicide Squad killing the Justice League. I mean, it says it in the title, which is pretty straightforward. But as game developers, they always do, they try to prolong the story. So what do? They add this weird side quest, right? Where, like, for instance, one of the side quests is you have to go and help out Penguin and rescue him. You rescue him, then you have to do a mission for him so he can trust you to give you something that you need. Then you continue on with the story in that game, and then Toyman appears. Same thing, you have to go out and do something for Toyman so he can build your trust and give you what you need to defeat the Justice League, so on and repeat. It does that a lot. Same thing here. It feels like the writers had this like idea for the story, and maybe DC was like, hey, I want this story to be prolonged, and there's so much filler with some of these subplots, like Batwings. By the time it ends, I kid you not, my response is like, okay, whatever, and I honestly did not care. Batgirls ends, and it was like, oh, that's cool. That's it. Others are interesting, like, for instance, the spoiler one, of course, Batman and Bluebird. Those are pretty interesting. Vicky one was really cool because she's trying to be a journalist, trying to seek out the truth, and you kind of figure it out what's going on, and yeah. And then there's Killer Croc. It's not bad, it's just like, okay, it's about him and his people. Again, it doesn't really help the story. It just feels like a lot of filler, but it's not bad filler. It's just, like I said, like a video game where the game starts here, you have to end here, but instead of going directly, they make you go to the side and then stop and then go back, and just so much just so you can actually reach to the end, so you can feel like you've been playing a long time, but in actuality you could have just went here, directly here. That's what this book feels like, and it's not bad. It's just it's just messy. And this one thing I can talk about this book or say is just, this feels just messy. There's so much going on, and unfortunately just doesn't work sometimes. When it does work, it's cool, but by the time you start enjoying it, it goes on to another story to you're like, wait, what happened to this story? And that's my biggest gripe of this book. It's going to be, like I said, it's too many stories going on. But apart from that, though, I gotta say, I still enjoyed it, though. It has its moments where it's like, this is pretty cool. It definitely has its twists and turns, especially when they reveal what's going on at the very end and who is, like, the main person, I guess you can say. It's pretty cool because the motivation of the villain, it's a bit odd, but it makes sense in the context of the story. I don't want to say too much about it, but when it's revealed and this villain describes their motivation, I'm like, okay, I actually like that. There's something to it. The paper quality, it is glossy because it's an omnibus, so there's that. Pacing, the pacing is average to above average. There are some very, very few moments where it dips down to the below average, but majority of the time it's going to be, I would say, like average, like slightly above average. The art's really good. There are some changes to the art from time to time. Some of it does look like cartoonish and very animated. Others has like greedy, like dirtiness to it. And others just something like this was very typical comic book art. So it's good overall. Do you need to have prior knowledge? I would say read Batman Zero Year because they do talk about, reference it every so often. Is it required? No. Necessary? No. But it recommended? Yeah, because again, they do reference it. Of course, with Riddler. If you read Batman Zero Year, you know what I'm talking about. So overall, though, what do I give this book? at the end of the day, with all these troubles and issues, I want to say I give it a low thumbs up. Yes, it definitely has its problems, and I kid you not, if you start reading this book, you're going to be like, yes, so many stories, and it doesn't flow perfectly. But I will say, though, some of the stories are pretty cool. As mentioned, the Batman's cool. The Vicky will actually like, even though it's short, but I like it. Then you have the Bluebird. Spoiler, the Batgirl's cool, but it ends just abruptly. So there are some cool moments on here, like especially towards the end when you start revealing who the villain is and so forth. Bit of a twist, I did not expect it. And so there are some things that I like, but you have to be prepared. This thing is massive, more than like 1,200 pages. But on top of that, so many different subplots, so you really have to pay attention, or maybe write down, take some notes. And again, gotta keep in mind, some of it just doesn't flow right. I'm not even joking with you. You can be reading about Batman, and then Bluebird story comes into the same issue, and then also spoiler, and then also Catwoman, and then the next issue is going to be like, for instance, all about Batwing, and then it goes back. It does that so often to you're like, ah, it's just frustrating. So once again, what do I give Batman Eternal Omnibus? I give it a low thumbs up. At the end of the day, I had a good time with it. It is enjoyable read, but just be aware of this whole subplots because it can get a little messy. Here is the end of the omnibus. I don't want to spoil something, so I'm covering it. So it's just some cover art to show in the back of the omnibus. Here is another art piece from Eternal 52. Some sketches here and there. And of course, spoiler, Clue Master, Bluebird. I do like this art and design of Bluebird. This more sketches. And just character list. And again, there's so many characters in here. Just, oh. But it's enjoyable read. Just keep in mind regarding the subplots. And that is that. Let me know what you guys think. Have you read this book? Do you plan on reading this book? Leave it in the comment section below. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button to know how to support the channel, but to keep up to date and watch videos like this. This includes an overview of Batman Eternal Omnibus, the reprint, and on to the next one.